Wow. City actually dropped points, so we know what that means. Liverpool is going to beat our ass. Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're doing a review for our game against Leicester, beat them 2-0, and just expand a little bit on the conversation that we had yesterday during the player ratings. Yesterday was a very interesting game because I just thought like a lot has changed, and if not a lot has changed, what I will say is that it feels different. This win felt first of all, the performance was just very good from us. It was very controlled, professional performance. That's our 5th win on the bounce, 8 wins out of 10, and the only 2 games in that 10-game run that we have not won in the league was against Man City, which I think a lot of us can say that we played really well in that game. We're unfortunate to not get all 3 points or anything out of that match, and the Burnley game. Other than that, we've won every single game in that 10-game run. And so we've been very good. But up until this point, it's felt as though, if we were to get somebody from the media outside of Arsenal saying something about our team or what we're doing, they're doing good, but, they're playing well, but nobody wants top 4, even though we're playing well. Oh, they look good, but, what about this? What about that? And I have to say, waking up this morning and kind of reading and seeing and watching, kind of what the media has been saying, it feels like Arsenal and Arteta have gained a little bit of respect, which is something that I haven't seen in a long time. There is almost like an overwhelming consensus in the football community that although Arsenal are not elite, we are a good football team. We're a good team with a lot of promising young players moving in the right direction. And Mikel Arteta has coached this team very well and made a lot of really good decisions. A lot of decisions that maybe to a certain extent look questionable now look like the right decisions. And so it's weird, feeling like obviously, people think that we are the favorites for top 4. Cool. But what's really been more, I think, gratifying is just seeing people say, wow, Arsenal are just a good team, right? And it's not just from the media, it's also our rivals. I quote tweeted and retweeted so many different, Spurs fans, Liverpool fans, Manchester United fans just saying like, Arteta has these boys cooking. Hate to say it, Arsenal are just a good team. And it feels like that realization has come all at one time from the media, from rivals, and from our own fan base. Within our own fan base, it feels like everybody's coming around to feeling like this team is just good. I think that also has to do with the fact that we're playing much better attacking football. I think that we've been a good team for a while, but the attacking part needed to come together. And now that we're attacking and we're free flowing and the football is nice to watch and we're defensively solid and we're getting the results and we're grinding out results against different types of opposition, it's all coming together at the right time. And it feels like Arsenal and Arteta are gaining a little bit of respect. And I like that. It feels good to know that other people beyond just, our little community can see that Arsenal are doing good things. And so I'm loving it. And it's been going so well that apparently PSG have Arteta on their short list for the open position which Pochettino leaves. So it's crazy, but I don't know if you guys have felt the same way, but it just feels like it's all come together at once after this Leicester game. And it's such an odd time because I don't think anybody really thought we were going to lose to Leicester, but I don't know if it was the performance, the fact that we've won 5 games in a row, the type of football that we're playing that has just made people kind of realize that it's real. Like, we actually are a good team. It's not just good form. It's not luck. We're good. Again, and that doesn't mean that we're the best. There's definitely levels in between, good and elite, so just in case. Osmond says, Jess, are you terrified about Wednesday as I am in light of the City result? Yep. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Nashville Gunner says, easiest team to cheer for in years, first time in years I could not pick a favorite player with ease. Yeah, no, I agree. I go back and forth every single day about which player I like the most. Let's see. Osman Ali says, I don't like bantering. We should go about our business stealthily. We might not get fourth place. Rajat said, you won't get top 4. We will. Okay. The ex-gunner says, great to jump in realistic view and not some Arteta out madcap channel. Yeah, I mean, on this channel, obviously, there's variations of positivity on this channel from everybody that I have on. And we have variations of a very similar opinion, especially between Harry, Souls, George, and I, that we think we're moving in the right direction, and we think Arteta is doing good things. Now, I have had my apprehensions and, questions around Arteta, and I haven't always been full on Arteta in. Like, I would never say, like, I've always known. I didn't always know. And it wasn't really until the new players kind of got settled in and I started to see that there was at least a backbone in this team. We obviously weren't playing good football, but there was a backbone and there was players that you could root for, where I personally was like, oh yeah, I want to see what Arteta can do with this group. But I mean, George has said we would make top 4 from the beginning. We haven't made top 4 yet, but we're doing a really good job. And so there has been positivity on this channel, but this kind of leads me to something that I do want to talk about in regards to the fan base and some not so great things that I've seen today in light of the Leicester performance, which just seems like such a weird benchmark because it wasn't like a team that we didn't think we were going to beat. But I wake up this morning and it's carnage on the timeline. Basically like a civil war between Arsenal fans, that have felt like they've always kind of known Arteta was the guy, and the ones that have been Arteta out for a long time. And so here's the thing, is that there's nothing wrong with having a difference of opinion. And if you have just arrived to arrived to a place where you can say, okay, I think we're moving in the right direction, that makes sense. That's fine. Some people wanted to see us be able to string along, 4 or 5 really good results against different types of opposition and play good football. I know that was a big thing, is that a lot of people felt like we were getting results, but we weren't playing good football, blah, 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 blah. I get it. But in social media, on Twitter, it just feels like there is a desperation to be right. And when you go big on something, you kind of have to be okay with if it not going the way that you anticipated going, to just kind of say, I was wrong. And it feels like there's just so apprehension to do it, like to the point where instead of just saying, you know what, I like what we're doing, I get behind the team, we're going in the right direction, it's, well, remember, Arteta should have been sacked. So let's not act like he's always been good. And now he's doing the things that I was saying that he should have been doing from the beginning. Now he's doing it. And now you guys are acting like he's always been good. I think there's 2 schools of thought here. And not saying one is right or one is wrong, but there's parts of the fan base that kind of feel like this is the this is the route that we needed to go on, the passage that we needed to go on in order to get to this destination. Whereas we had to tear it down to put it back together, and we were always going to go through a difficult time. regardless of who was at the helm. And then there's others that felt like, had we had hired Conte, had we had hired Ancelotti, had we had hired Enrique, had we hired a better or a more experienced manager, we would have gotten here a lot sooner. And keeping Arteta here just prolonged the process. And we've wasted 2 years. Two different schools of thought, right? The reality is we'll never know if that's true. We'll never know if we had hired Ancelotti, would things have been different? Or if we had hired Conte, would things have been different? Or if we had kept Guendouzi and kept Aubameyang and kept Ozil and got a different manager, things would have just magically come together. We don't know. All we know is that we sit here with a team that we can really get behind, playing good football, defensively sound, stringing together amazing results in a trajectory that looks like it could take us into the top 4 for the first time in 6 years. And so I feel like that's the bigger thing than, well, he was bad for 2 years, so just get over it. And that's kind of how I feel, like, let's just move forward, because being right or wrong is like below just being an Arsenal fan and just hoping for the best. And it feels like we've gotten really bogged down in Arteta out, Paella Pep, Pep's cone man. He's ruining the club. He hates these players. He hates that player. And every time we lose a match, you bring up all the things that he's done. Or every time we win a game, you go after the people that are Arteta out. Let it go. Just let it go. I was very shocked to see the way my timeline looked this morning. And yes, it does have to do with like who you follow and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, even people that I feel like probably have a very positive timeline were talking about this. And at this point, it just feels like, let's just get over it. Like, Arteta's doing a good job and he may just be the guy. So let's just move on. You know what I mean? Let's see. Osman is saying, at this stage, anyone who isn't even slightly convinced by Arteta is lacking sincerity and stocked up in pride. BX Gunner says, exactly, Tony. So Tony was saying, I agree. The negatives are way less, but are just yelling louder. And yes, this is it's a small group, but at the same time, they are quite loud. And it's just, sometimes it's just like, but for why? Like, we've just won 5 games on the bounce. And instead of everybody just kind of banding together, of course, everything isn't perfect. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but what I am saying is that this is a team that we can finally get behind, that are playing for the badge, playing for the manager, are playing attractive football, and are beating teams, so let's just be happy. And so let's go ahead and kind of talk about the performance against Leicester, which when I actually went back and watched it, I missed so much. I was so nervous during the game that I missed so much. We were good. Like, I would say for 75% of that game, we were very good. And then there was like the 15 or so minutes at the back end of the first half where we kind of let them back into the game or let them have more chances than we probably were comfortable with. But overall, that was a good freaking game from Arsenal Football Club. And there's something special at the Emirates when this team plays. It just feels like we go up a level. The fans are really into it. And it's really something nice to see, because if you've ever been to the Emirates, especially before this new group of players have come in, the Emirates was not bumping like that if you've ever been there in person. So the first things first, let's talk about Thomas Partey and his perfect role. So obviously Thomas Partey was, in my opinion, I thought he was really hard on himself when he said that he was a 4 out of 10. But I respect how he feels about how he plays or how he's been playing, because it's his opinion. But he was not performing to the level that we expected him to since he's come from Atletico. We all know that Thomas Partey is a top central midfielder. Some of us feel like he's world class. Others feel like he's a top player. Wherever you stand on that, we know that we expected this player to take us to another level and to really secure that midfield for the next couple of years. And it just really hasn't worked out that way until now. And there was a period in the season where I felt like the feelings around Thomas Partey were so negative, to the point where it was uncomfortable. You guys know I'm a huge Thomas Partey fan, so it was uncomfortable, in my opinion. So to see him kind of go from that 4 out of 10 to the guy that he is now, I couldn't be happier. And I feel like the role that Arteta has given him has really suited him as a player. When he first came to Arsenal, one of the things that he said is he wanted to be defensive like Michael Essien, but attacking like Yaya Toure. And he wanted to take more responsibility because at Atletico, if you think about the type of release clauses some of these players have, they have 150 million, 200 million, very high release clauses. Thomas Partey's release clause was 45 million. And I think part of them maybe undervaluing him made him easier for us to get. A player of his quality should have never left Atletico for $45 million release clause, 50 million, whatever it was. And I think ultimately when he said something like, I want more responsibility, I think almost he wanted to push himself and do more. And this role is giving him the opportunity to do that, to push forward, to be a more central figure in midfield. Because in that Atletico midfield, it was Koke, it was Saul, and he was just kind of a hardworking member of that central midfield group. In this group right now, he is so important to what we do, because he's not just a break up the play, kind of destroyer dude. He gets the ball for us. He moves us up the pitch. He's the link between the defense and the midfield and the attack. He does a lot of our plays and playmaking from deep within a midfield. He switches the play and he kind of starts the tempo. It's him and Ben White really getting the tempo going for the team. And so that is giving him more of a role. And I think that is really suiting him versus him being in that double pivot and deferring to Granit Xhaka. Last season and early on in the season, you could kind of see that maybe there was a little bit of reluctancy from Thomas Partey to really take the onus in midfield. It was very much, I get the ball and I give it to Xhaka, a little square pass, and Xhaka does everything else. And I think we've went up levels allowing Thomas Partey to do that job, because I've always felt like Thomas Partey can pass just as good as Granit Xhaka, if not better. It's not with his left foot, but at the same time, it's just better. And what he can do in terms of getting away from pressure, dipping the shoulder, doing his little feints to, get out of pressure, I think is something that we've really lacked in midfield for so long. So seeing Thomas Partey play in this way is giving me chills, because this is exactly what we needed in our midfield. And this role really, really suits him. And I wanted to ask you guys, where do you think he ranks in terms of central defensive midfielders in the Premier League? Because it may be difficult to really, give him a ranking, because he hasn't really played consistently for Arsenal. But at the same time, I want to know what you guys think, because I don't think there's many central defensive midfielders that are better than him right now. So on form, where do we think he ranks? We have Fabinho, Rodri, Conte/Jorginho. They kind of share the role. Neves, Douglas Luiz, Basuma. Where do you think he kind of ranks? Could we put him up there, with the Fabinhos and the Rodris? And if he's not up there, what would he have to do to get to that level? Let's see. Seeing a lot of Spurs stuff. Johnson says Arsene Wenger has never won his last 11 to 12 games to put us in Champions League, so it can happen if the players focus. Why are we talking about Kane? Yo-Yo says second half versus West Ham last season was the first time we saw Partey, Odie click together. That's very true, Yo-Yo. It's so weird because when you think about that, that was one of the highlights of last season, and it wasn't even a win, but it was the first time that we kind of seen a version of what we're doing now, albeit it was after we played terribly for the first like 30 minutes of that game. But you saw Thomas Partey and Odegaard really click and do some of the things that they're doing now. Obviously, they're doing it at such a higher level and more consistent level now. But you're absolutely right. That second half of the West Ham game was the first time that we've seen that particular combination really go together. Ham6 says the new role Xhaka plays can suit someone like Kusama. Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit, the Xhaka role. And Yo-Yo says second half. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Nashville says Fabinho is better. He is on par with Rodri. Nam6 says current form, I'd say top 3. Vladimir says I'd honestly put Thomas Partey third to Fabinho and Conte. BX Gunner says healthy, comfortable Partey is top 3/4. Tony Glaive says Partey is not elite. He needs at least 2-3 years. I don't know what you mean. He's played at like a very high level for so many years. He's won the Champions League, for God's sake. Like, he's not a kid, you know what I mean? Rohit says Partey is top 5 in the Prem right now. Rodri isn't quite as good, but Partey needs to continue his form through the rest of the season. So if he's top 5, who are the 4 guys that are above him? I'd really be interested to know that. Captain Joka says he needs to consistently dominate midfield and work on his long passes. That's his weakness. Cool. Giannis says, I say he's top 5 right now, not in any particular order. Oh, Declan Rice, that's another person. Fabinho, Declan Rice, Bissouma, Rodri, and Thomas. I think that's good company to be in. You know what? And I'm not pushing for him to be the top right now. There's definitely consistency and performing at a high level, and also being able to do this against every single type of opponent, right? So he was so good against Leicester. It would be a shame for him not to perform at that same level against Liverpool. We've seen him do it against Man City, but we didn't win the game, which wasn't his fault. So what I would say is that in current form, I think that he's right there with Fabinho and Rodri as probably like top 3. But in order for him to be that full stop, like not just on form, but just in general, I would say that he needs to not help us get into the top 4, but just kind of keep us at this level and play like this 80% of the time. 80 to 90% of the time. I know he's going to have difficult games, but I would need him to play like this like 90% of the time, you know? And but I think he can get there. I think he can get there. And I think as Arsenal tried to push up the table, we should be looking at each of our players and saying, where do they kind of rank with the other players that play in these positions in other teams? Because Arsenal should have the top 1 to 3 player in every single position, in my opinion. Like, that's where we need to get to. And so I think we're really close there with Thomas Partey if he can keep up that consistency. And I also think we're really close there with Martin Odegaard and Bukayo Saka. There are like 3 best players, really. Let's see. BX Gunner says Partey, Xhaka, Odegaard can rival any midfield right now with the chemistry and comfort. Once the confidence sets in permanently, we are cooking. Jack says Partey is just mustard. Nashville says Rice is way up there. Break the bank and put Rice on our plate. I get the Rice thing, you guys. 1, I think it's unrealistic that we would get him, but 2, I'm not sure. He wouldn't be my choice. But there's a lot of people that would want like Declan Rice to replace Granit Xhaka. I think we need a different profile, but that's just me. Hamsick says, what I'd say, if Thomas improves his shot accuracy, he could easily be the best 6 in the league. Yeah, I mean, he did hit the crossbar, you know, so he's getting a little bit closer. Yo-Yo says this team explodes once 34 is replaced. Like center backs, I assess midfielders off their partnerships. Exactly. So I think we're all kind of in the same the same thing where it's kind of like, we know Thomas Partey isn't quite there, but he can get there. And I think that that's fair enough. You know what I mean? You guys know I love Thomas Partey. I don't think he's quite there. He needs that consistency, but he definitely can be that. So just to kind of just to kind of tie this part of the show up in terms of Thomas Partey. Something that I didn't know was that I think it was like an Athletic article where they had spoken to Arteta, and Arteta said that Sambi is actually the heir apparent to Thomas Partey's position as the lone six in that midfield. And I get that the way that we play, it's very flexible, it's fluid. Sometimes the other number 8 drops in, but ultimately what we are playing is some version of a 4-3-3/4-1-4-1. And so what do you guys think about Sambi and his ability to at some point take over for Thomas Partey in that role? We haven't seen a lot of Sambi. I personally believe in Sambi's talent. I think Sambi could be somebody that could step into that role when he bulks up, when he gets used to the defensive part of things. But he's right now in our team the closest thing to Thomas Partey in terms of being able to drop the shoulder and the feints and the long range playmaking that he has. He's put in some beautiful balls in behind to some of our players when he has played. So what do you guys think about Sambi potentially fitting into that role once he becomes ready? Obviously this is not anytime soon. I personally believe that Thomas Partey will be here to the end of his career, and he has about 2 or 3 more seasons with us at the highest level before somebody else needs to step in. Let's see. Nashville says Sambi is good on the ball, just needs to learn the other side of the game. That's kind of what I think too. I still really do believe in Sambi, even though he has some up and downs, but like at the same time, like you would expect that from any young player, right? Rohit says Partey's role requires supreme focus and consistency. Sambi has the physical chops, but it's more a mental thing, which is hard to predict. Yeah, well, that is true. But I think that also comes with experience, right? And like, I think it's, even though it's kind of to our detriment, I do think it's good for Sambi to get a couple of knocks like in the beginning, so he can kind of see what the Premier League is like and understand what level he needs to get to. And personally, I think he's had some games for us where he was one of the best players. We were terrible against Chelsea in the second game of the season, but he was one of our best players in that match. He was obviously so good against Newcastle. That was like a man of the match type performance from him in midfield. So I think that I would just want to give him some time. But again, if this is Arteta saying this, he's kind of been right about a lot of things. I can't really name much that I feel like Arteta got wrong. So if Arteta says that he can see Sambi there, I think that also makes recruitment a little bit easier because we don't have to bring in somebody to replace Thomas or to back up Thomas. We already have that person. We just need to mold him and let him become that player and just focus on the other side of midfield in that left 8. Saturdays equals youth says Sambi is talented, but he has a ways to go to be an elite midfielder in the Premier League. Of course, that makes a lot of sense. BX Gunner says, I will be 24, 25 when Sambi will be 24, 25 when Partey can't do it every week and have experience by then. Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think, honestly, if that's our plan, I think that's really good squad building because Sambi is so similar to Thomas Partey. And if we build the team in this way where we have a central defensive midfielder sitting in a single pivot that can be somewhat of a destroyer, but is more of like a deep lying playmaker, kind of like, it's hard to describe because Thomas Partey kind of does everything. He breaks up play. He can beat a man and progress the ball with his dribbling, but also with his passing. And Sambi has that as well, but he needs to know when to do it, when not to do it, and also be physically big and strong enough to withstand some of the pressure that he'll be under. But I think that will come over time. Tony says Sambi's stats have him as a progressive monster, right? My eye test is a huge fan. Yeah, he is very good in progression, like ball progression in both ways, in his passing and in his dribbling. So, which is very similar to Thomas Partey. Iran says, Jess, I think if Sambi matures, he would free up Thomas to be an option at 8. say if our main choice of 8 isn't available that game. Good point. Let's see. Stefan says, Sambi's positional play needs serious work, but he has potential. He shows a willingness to take the ball in dangerous positions, which is very important for that position because Thomas Partey takes the ball and like when he's basically marked. And the only thing about Sambi is he's done it sometimes when he didn't need to do it. He held on to the ball too long. But those are things that you can learn. I don't think I've ever questioned his technical ability, what he can do on the ball. It's just his decision making, and that can be fixed, especially because he's so young. Seswat says Sambi will come good. Gut feeling seems to be made for a single pivot rather than a double, where sometimes midfielders need to drift wide to defend. Here he'll stay central. Good point. So I do, and when we say he's the heir apparent, that means in like 2, 3, 4 seasons, because I know that we have kind of like this thing where once a player turns 30, it's like, well, we need to start replacing him. But until, for me, Thomas Partey starts showing signs of aging, he's only 29 now, I think. I don't think there's any reason to be like worried about needing to bring somebody in or force somebody into that position. I have always kind of said that I was hoping that he would become our Fernandinho, somebody that would be around for a while to the rest of his career, and maybe leave when his contract is up and be a senior member of the squad and an important member in the short term. So I don't think we have anything to worry about. When I say heir apparent, I mean in like the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, not now. Let's see. Hamsick says Sambi isn't mature yet. Very good talent, no question, but he can buckle sometimes, especially in that role, which requires good experience. Exactly. So it's in time, right? It's in time, and but don't be surprised. I mean, we may see Sambi at some point in these next couple of games because it's just so many games thick and fast. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see him at some point, but I do think Sambi is a huge talent. Vladimir says Sambi was really good in one game against Newcastle. I think I see him as a creator more than a destroyer. But Thomas Partey isn't a destroyer, is he? You know, he kind of is the smart type of central defensive midfielder that doesn't need to do a bunch of crunching tackles because he's just at the right place at the right time, right? Which is really the case for a lot of our players, except for like Gabriel. He's really our only like destroyer guy out there. But yeah, so that's kind of how, like, Thomas Partey was so good against Leicester. Like when I rewatched it, I was like, wow, like he was actually like really, really good. And his goal was obviously not really like an amazing goal because like obviously Leicester are like so shit on like any sort of set pieces. But I'm just happy to see him like really gaining his footing. So we can start talking about Odegaard now. What a player, you know. There's a lot of talk around Odegaard as being the technical leader of our team. And I think it's difficult for me to see how like he's going up levels, but like when he has performances like the ones that he's had before Leicester, it's like how much better is this guy going to get? Because if he gets any better from now, what kind of player do we actually have, right? And it's just everybody looks to pass him the ball. He takes so much of the responsibility in tight spaces. He progresses up the pitch. Thomas Partey always looks for him. Everybody's looking to pass the ball to Odegaard, and I think that's a good indication of where your standing is in the team. And the best thing about Odegaard for me is not just obviously the flicks and the tricks and his vision and the weight of pass and how he always makes the right decision and his partnership with Saka. All those things make me so happy. But you guys, I can't say enough about his work rate. The work rate, like, I mean, I think I don't know, he ran the most against Wolves, and it was like 12. I don't know what the thing was, but it was like 12. He almost ran the exact same amount, like against Leicester. Like he runs the most, like in every single game. Exactly 11.4 kilometers distant covered, whatever. You guys, I don't know distances and all that kind of stuff. You guys will learn this about me if you guys don't know it by now. I don't do math. I just, the numbers are just like not my thing. So if I just allow me, okay? So, right, exactly. 12 like kilometer distance or whatever. That's what he had against Wolves. He was really close to that against Leicester. His work rate is bananas. And I get the comparisons to Mesut Ozil because let's get it right. Mesut Ozil in his pomp was extraordinary. And what he could do on the ball was special. And Odegaard has some of that as well. A lot of that. But it's the work rate for me. It's just how he leads by what he does. And I know he's out there and he's pointing and telling people where to go, but he's not doing it in a way where it's like, well, what are you doing? He's doing everything. And we saw it like also when, Yo-Yo mentioned this was against West Ham, when him and Thomas Partey and Lacazette really turned that game around for us. And he's just went strength for strength. And it's just so crazy how he's gone from a loanee that a lot of people, including me, weren't 100% sure about to our best player. He's our best player. He just is. I love Saka and I love Thomas Partey, and it's close, but Odegaard is our best player and most important player. And I just think he does so freaking much. He reminds me of Ozil. He reminds me of Fabregas. He reminds me of David Silva. He reminds me of all these good players. Modric as well. I see that in the chat box. And a lot of it just has to do with him just being all things to us. For 30 million, I'm like speechless, because if he gets any better, what do we have here? I think he's going to be world class, you guys. If he continues on this trajectory, he's going to be world class. And I hope we just build around him in a way where he can get better as well. Because obviously when you have good players in your team like Thomas Partey and Saka and Odegaard, you have to build around them with players of that same caliber that they can grow with and really show off their skills. And that's kind of something that we've lacked over the last couple of maybe 5 years or so. All of the good players that we have not filled the team with players of their same quality. That's essentially why Ozil and Alexis and players like that, going all the way back to Van Persie and Fabregas, Nasri, why these players always wanted to leave is because they were never playing with players of their same level, and they were always meant to just kind of carry the team. And so we have to make sure that we do the opposite this time and fill the team with those same players of that same ilk. Odegaard is on a completely different level than, he would not look out of place in any of our old Arsenal teams, right? That were at the peak of technical level, that played fluid football. He's amazing. And so he's come a long way, because if we remember at the beginning of the season, he wasn't even really in the team. ESR was keeping him out of the team. And I remember I think he got dropped after the Brighton game because he was just losing the ball so much. He was unreliable on the ball. And he was also losing the ball and just kind of remonstrating and all that. And he's come so far since then. And he just gets better and better and better, every single game. And I love that he leads by example. But kind of going back to the conversation around building around Odegaard and making sure he has the right players around him so that he thrives. What kind of striker does Odegaard need? Because Odegaard should have way more assists than what he has. He is high up there with expected assists, but the expected assist does not match the actual assist numbers, right? And he needs somebody to play off of. He needs somebody that also is making runs in the box that he can find. And we saw yesterday against Leicester that he had that little clip ball over the top to Martinelli in the striker position. And I just wonder, what kind of striker does Odegaard need so we can get the best out of Odegaard? Because if you're going to have a player with that type of vision and that type of technical quality, you don't want to give him a Giroud, right? And that's not to be mean about Giroud. We know in hindsight, Giroud was probably better than what we thought. We didn't give him enough credit. But there were times where you just kind of felt like if we had a better striker, if we just spent the money on Luis Suarez, if we just made sure that there was somebody there for him to pass the ball to. We would have gotten more out of Ozil and more out of a lot of the creative players that we've had over the years. So what kind of striker does Odegaard need this summer for us to get the best out of him? And I'm asking y'all because I don't know. Let's see. Dominic says, Norwegian Dynamo, he simply does everything in midfield. He really does. And I thought, this is no shade to Xhaka because he also played an important role in that midfield. But Thomas Partey and Odegaard were just on a level. They were just on a level. I don't know how to explain it. Let's see. Hamsick says, Odegaard is half the price of Maddison, but twice the player. I agree. Tony says, Odegaard gets the ball out so fast, even as at Premier League speed, opponents don't have the time to kick foul him. And the one thing that kind of I wasn't sure about with Odegaard was him getting up to speed and the physicality of the Premier League. And if you're a really good player, you're a top level player, even if you come from a slower league, you can adapt. Let's take Bernardo Silva for an example. He's somebody that's smaller, but he adapted to the Premier League like anything because he's so good. And Odegaard's done quite similarly. And what I was kind of missing from his game that he had at Real Sociedad was that quickness and that sharpness, because he can also beat a man. He's not quick. He's not Saka, but he can juke a dude and go past them. And we saw some of that yesterday. And so he's cooking. The next level of Odegaard is coming because the best football that I ever seen him play was at Real Sociedad. And I'm seeing more of that Odegaard where he's quick. He can beat a man. He's I think we're just seeing the beginning, you guys. It's really scary what kind of player we have. Wayne says he basically already is world class. Signed to Real Madrid at 16. Is no mean feat. He's technically outstanding and no joke. He reminds me of how I played pro clubs on FIFA, but real life. That's crazy. Awesome. Lashane says Bergkamp level. That's the level that he's at. Tawanda says Real Madrid have a record of selling very, very talented players, the likes of Wesley Sneijder, Robin, more recently Kovacic, and Odegaard. It's so interesting because on I think it was one of those TalkSport things, this guy was like, well, I'm still apprehensive. I don't know. There's still doubt because why would Real Madrid be so okay with selling him? And I was like, shut up. You know what I mean? Good teams sell players that they shouldn't have sold. Gnabry, it happens. Or Gnabry, because you guys really got on me the other day about how I pronounced it. Gnabry, not Narbury. Gnabry. Got it. So it happens. And I think they sold him, so you wouldn't sell a good player. I think that's such an elementary way of thinking about the value of a player and how good they actually are. Chelsea sold De Bruyne. Chelsea sold Salah. So does that mean that they weren't good players and you should have had apprehension around them? They needed to go somewhere else to show their quality. And they needed to leave the Premier League, go outside, develop more, and then come back to the Premier League. Odegaard went from Real Madrid to Arsenal. He's went from the biggest club in the world, the best club in the world. Real Madrid is the legacy club. It is the legacy club. To a very difficult league in the Premier League and has shined. So where's the apprehension coming from? You just sound stupid. So they really should take away the mics of some of these guys. Hamsick says, you just described Odegaard perfect. Cool. I'm glad I did. Aaron says, it's so important we get Champions League for the likes of Odegaard and Saka, especially with the contract situation at Liverpool with Salah looking a little I am a little bit worried just because they're going to be looking at our players. And Klopp has spoken about Odegaard and Martinelli and Saka. So we need to be very careful and make sure that we are, regardless if we make Champions League or not, we need to have a Champions League level summer to ensure that we get top 4 next season, no matter what. Or the season after this one ends, if that makes sense. So Yeah, we need to be very, very careful. S says give him João Felix. Lashane says Erling Haaland. I mean, that would be great. S says or Alexander Isak. They played at Sociedad. Let's see. Seswat says Darwin Nunez might be it. Saturdays equal youth says Haaland plus Odegaard would be ridiculous. Man, I wish we were just a little bit ahead so we could, like, if we had Champions League this season and had Odegaard, like, I think we could try to get Haaland, but I think we're just a little bit too far away for that one, to be honest. Captain Joka says he needs João Felix. Aaron says the role of the striker is evolving every season. In general in football or for Arsenal. Ray says he needs players around him that can present a significant threat themselves so the opponents can't focus solely on him. And I also think about, like, so when we play against Liverpool on Wednesday, obviously they're going to try to kick Odegaard to death and keep him from getting any joy. Can he find a way through that game to be more present? Because we've seen in the past when we've had these creative players and we played against good teams, sometimes they go missing in big games because it's so easy to mark them out of the game. But I also think that's a symptom of not having multiple good players in your team. When you have a good team that has more than one creative source, it's harder to stop you. And I think that's where the left 8 stroke left wing is going to be really important for us to address, because that player needs to be a creative player as well, so that if we do play against a team like Liverpool that are going to be smart enough to kick him and try to keep him out of the game, it doesn't hurt us. Or they'll go to the other player and leave Odegaard free, or the striker can be that person as well. So I think that's a very good point. Yo-Yo says, I'm convinced Laka will be replaced with a second striker or a midfielder, not a so-called 9. I think João Felix would be a perfect option. I don't really think we need a striker. I think we need somebody that can play in a fluid front three, kind of similarly to the way that Lacazette's playing now, but with more of a goal threat. I think we would suffer a little bit with somebody that can't play football with us. But when you look at us going after somebody like Vlahovic, that makes me think twice about how I about my own opinions, because I feel like it should be somebody like João Felix, but going after Vlahovic says it's more of a complete 9. But are there any other complete 9s that we could go after right now that would be worth it? I'm not sure. I think so. Stefan says Odegaard needs to play with a give-and-go striker, someone who doesn't hold on to the ball for long, someone who will return a pass and then attack in the box. Yeah, that sounds good. People are saying Isak. Nashville says silent G like Nat. Yeah, Gnabry. I'm not saying Gnabry, I'm saying Gnabry, right? Yo-Yo says, I wouldn't be surprised if Madrid had a strange clause in Odie's sale, like the Casemiro deal a few years back. Like what? What kind of clause is it? Saswat says the Raul du Thomas rumors died instantly after the window ended. I think he might be a legit option if the analysis software is back up. Think Martinelli will be the main striker option once groomed. Yeah, I think Martinelli is going to be an option through the center, but we'll see. So we all kind of agree that Odegaard is like literally on the cusp of being world class. Like, he just needs to be able to do it at a high level, and continue that consistency. And hopefully we'll be in Champions League and he can show it there, because if you're a world-class player, you play on the biggest stage, and that's the Champions League. He also needs another player or two to play with so that he can't be so easily marked out of the game. But the performance from Odegaard yesterday was so good. And he plays like a captain as well, which I think makes the captain conversation really interesting. I don't think he'll get the captaincy because I don't think he's been here long enough. I think Arteta respects that you kind of need to have been here for a while to to gain the full respect of your teammates. And that might be why Tierney would get it before him, because Tierney's obviously been here for a little bit longer. But I think he's going to end up being our captain at some point, because he just exudes confidence and leadership and leading by example, but also with being able to like point and shout and do those types of things as well. So I just think Odegaard has been such a steal, and thank God nobody listens to me and we didn't get Madison. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you guys, I don't think Isak's having like a really good moment right now, but also I know players go through bad form. So we'll have to see what happens in the summer. Lautaro Martinez would have been perfect, but I think he'll be staying at Inter. I also didn't like how it kind of felt like if you watch the entire game, both legs against Liverpool, how he looked to be almost like afraid of the Liverpool backline. He didn't want to get too close to them. I know he scored a goal, but other than that, like, he was quite reserved in those matches. And I mean, the Premier League is going to be like that all the time. So I know you don't always come up against Van Dijk, but I wonder about what he would be like in the Premier League. Let's see. Captain Joka says, tomorrow you will see João Felix and know why you need him. Manchester United are getting knocked out tomorrow. Look, like, he's been really ticking up in form lately, João Felix. And that's not necessarily a good thing for us, because if we're looking to bring him in, they'll want more money for him if they're willing to sell. But he's a very good player. And I think he could be obviously a more expensive version of Odegaard, where he's kind of not in the right place, kind of child star type of a player that we kind of rehabilitate. And he needs to play for a team that plays good football, or like free-flowing attacking football, and I think he'd be perfect. So he would be my choice. All right, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Xhaka and Lacazette. So I had a tweet that I put out on yesterday during the game, where I said that I thought Xhaka was really struggling in that game, in that left 8 position. And of course, people came for my neck. It always happens. You always get cooked online. It is what it is. But I think what it is that, one, there's a certain group in the fan base that are constantly wanting to save Xhaka, and they feel like he's this misunderstood guy and we don't understand his value and he's going to be so hard to replace. And I agree with all those things. I've always agreed with those things. Not always, but I do understand that Granit Xhaka is a very good player. He has those red mist moments where he just kind of loses his mind and does dumb things. But in terms of his footballing ability, I don't think he's crap. I actually think he's very good. And he works hard and he kind of just does what he's asked to do. And that's why managers love him. And so when I criticize him, or when I say that I think he was struggling, what I mean is that I know what he is, and I know that that's probably as good as he can do. But in terms of getting the most out of that position, I don't think we are. That's what I mean. And so it comes off as you're just trying to find a reason to hate on Xhaka. You're just trying to find a reason to be negative. And I'm not. Because ultimately, I think Xhaka's doing as good as he can in that role. Do I think he could release the ball a little bit quicker? Yeah, but then at the same time, Xhaka needs to be deeper in a position where he can think a little bit longer and get his feet sorted in order to get the passes off. So I'm very aware that this is probably as good as it gets with Xhaka in that advanced left position. But I don't think we're getting the most out of it. And that's what I meant. I didn't mean that he was shit, you know? And the Xhaka stands will always come for you anytime that you say anything about him. But I do understand what his value is. He's really important to us now, really because we don't have anybody else, but because he's the best of what we have. And it's not just that either. He's really good with Thomas Partey, and that's freaking fine, right? But when I look at Xhaka and Lacazette, But we know that those are the two positions that we need to and we need and we will improve upon in the summer. So it's kind of like a waiting game, right? We know it's not perfect and it's not a perfect fit right now. But I think it's important to not always focus on how they limit us and also and try to turn the focus, especially to the end of the season, and kind of focus on how they lead us. And what I mean by that is I focus a lot of my time on like, okay, how can this team get better? How can we do this better? How can we bring in a player that fits this position better? So often it comes off like I don't give a shit about what those players are doing right now, but I do. And I do think that, you know, at times we can get a little bit hasty and impatient and decide, okay, well, I'm tired of watching Lacazette and Xhaka play here in these positions. So let's just throw Martinelli up top, or let's just put Emil Smith Rowe in that left eight and it'll cook. I don't think that's the case. I think those players, whether we like it or not, are leading us very well and leading that young team forward. I think what they do, how they lead, how they play, especially since December, has been pivotal in our form since December, because we've been very good since December. And I think they're a big part of it. So I guess until the end of the season, as clunky as it looks sometimes and how frustrated I could get with Lacazette in his striking and maybe not getting his shots off quick enough, and Xhaka in this left eight role and not really feeling like it's the best fit, I'm just going to focus on how they lead us, because I think they're doing an excellent job. And maybe I don't talk about it enough. And I'll talk about it here. I'm not just going to go out there and be like, let me tell you why I love Xhaka so much. That's not what I'm going to do. But what I will say is that I'll probably do a better job at making sure that I just let that part of it go, because ultimately they're going to go. So it's kind of like, what's the point of even like just bitching about it anymore? It's not the right fit for Xhaka. It's not where he thrives. And Lacazette is also somebody that's just kind of doing the best that he can. But them doing the best that they can and sucking it up and leading us could potentially get us to top 4. And that's what's most important. So yeah, it's just, I think they're leading us instead of limiting us. And that's what kind of needs to be talked about, right? I don't hate Xhaka and I don't hate Lacazette. You guys know that. So what do you guys think about that? Just focusing on how they lead us instead of how they limit us, especially because we know they're going to go anyway. So like, what's the point? Let's see. S says, what do you want Xhaka to do? Play like Gundogan? He's not capable. And I think that's the point, right? Is that I recognize that it's not going to change. He's doing as good as he can. So maybe I don't even need to say it anymore, that I just don't think that we're getting the most out of that position, but he's doing the best that he can. And the best that he can do is very good. And I don't need to be bitching about it anymore. Ray says, Xhaka is a manager's pet. He will do a job, but he's not good enough to own a specific role himself. Hence why he's been moved to a more advanced position. He's not ideal for that role at all. But Ray, like, he's not ideal for it. But I don't think there's anybody better for that role right now, And so is it that bad? I don't think it's that bad. I just think we're a little bit impatient right now, because we can see where the team is going. And we're like, if we could just get Jude Bellingham and stick him in that role. We could just get Fabian Ruiz or Renato Sanchez, stick him in that role. If we could just get João Felix, stick him in that role. Lacazette out, Xhaka out, we'll be in a good position. But like, that's not going to happen to the end of the season. But are they so bad? Is it just that we want something else so bad that they seem so much worse? Because what they're doing right now is really important. And they're both the captains of this team. They really are. Like, Lacazette is the captain in terms of leading the young players, and Xhaka is basically Arteta on the pitch. So, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? And you need players like this. You need players in the team that don't sparkle. They just do their job. They just go out there, do their job, and allow the players that we really, really love to look really, really good, right? So They need a little, I think they deserve a little bit more credit, especially from me. You know, I'm going to give them more credit. Let's see. Blake says, I think Arsenal won against Leicester because they miss Harry Maguire due to the fact that he's a natural leader and dictates the back line. Fair enough. Drew Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Tawanda says it's going to be expensive to replace both. It is. It's going to be expensive. And I've said before that I don't think replacing Granit Xhaka is that easy, because there's not a lot of like left-sided eights that can do the attacking part. Give us more going forward, but it can also drop in and help Thomas Partey defensively. And if the ones that are out there are very freaking expensive. And I don't really think it's Renato Sanchez, you guys. I don't think, first of all, he plays off of the right. He's a good ball progressor, but he's also really injury prone. Tielemans, also somebody that tends to play off of the right, can also play on the left because he's kind of two-footed, but can he drop into the double pivot when we need to defensively to help us out? Not really. You know, so that's two of the players right there that people are talking about that I don't really think replace Xhaka that good. And then so when we start talking about the more expensive options, they're expensive and you need Champions League. So it is going to be difficult. Yo-Yo says, Henderson and Milner aren't ballers, but they've helped Klopp's Liverpool despite their glaring limitations. I mean, you do need these players sometimes, and we can get top four with them. So how bad could they really be if we could get top four with them? I don't think they're really holding us back right now. I think in terms of progression for the next couple of years, they would hold us back. But not now. Lionide says, Haaland comes back from a 2-month injury as a sub and did a 36.3 kh gegenpress. Okay. All right. S says Renato Sanchez can play from the left as well. Fair enough. Renato Sanchez is as two-footed as they come, but can he stay fit? You know, and I also think that player needs to be somewhat of a passer. And I know that he can pass, but I don't know, you guys. Like, I just look at it and I just think he's really good on comps. He's one of those players. He has sauce. He looks really good on compilations. But whenever I watch him for Lille, I just think we can do a little bit better there. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, but Lacazette and Xhaka have done a really good job. And they were both good yesterday. They just weren't as sparkly as the rest, you know, so no need to shit on them, right? You know, because they're doing a good job. And they were really good yesterday. And expectations for Wednesday. We won 5 on the bounce. We're playing against Liverpool. Obviously, City dropped points today, which was really like, you know, because that means that the mentality monsters, Liverpool, are going to be smelling blood. And I'm worried. Not super worried because, I don't know, maybe I'll whisper it. It's kind of like a free hit, you know? Don't want to go back to being free hit FC, but I don't think this is a game where if we lose this game, it's the end of the world. What I do think, though, is that we can get something from it. I want us to get something from it. But I'm kind of like, just make sure you don't get blown away. And the reason for that, and also don't get any injuries, because I think the Aston Villa game is a little bit more important because it's a game that we should be winning. But just imagine if we could get something from this game. Oh my gosh, but we'd have to play out of our skin. Wouldn't we? I mean, it's insane. Oh, we haven't won 6 on the bounce. I thought it was 5. I thought it was 5 on the bounce. Either way. But what are your expectations for the match against Liverpool? What are you guys expecting? Are you expecting us to win? Are you expecting us to get something? Are you just expecting a good performance? Are you expecting a loss? What do you guys actually expect for this match? Because I think it's going to be really, really hard, especially now that Man City have dropped those points. Because, let's see, will they be within 1 if they beat us? Look, well, you guys let me know what you think. You just knew they were going to drop points. Okay. Yep. So if Liverpool This would be their game in hand. So if they beat us, they will be 1 point behind Man City. And they know that. And that's really why City capitulated today, is because they are worried. And I'm sure that Pep is on the phone to Arteta right now saying, Arteta, Mikel, you need to beat them. You need to beat them. We need it. Like seriously, because they need us to beat Liverpool, because Liverpool are just, and here's the thing, there's just some teams that you don't match up well with, and Liverpool is just our team. They have something over us. I think it's the way that they play, the intensity, because with City, they don't really like run you to death. And they're a little bit more like, oh, tiki-taka, whatever. But Liverpool just beats your ass. Like, it really is just like, it doesn't matter. It's long balls over the top. They run you over. Your defenders are all over the place, falling all over the ground. And the guy's just chipping your keeper. And it's just like, oh, they scored again. It's really, Mane, elbowing you in the face first 30 seconds of the game. It's a rough match. And they're like grown men, the Hendersons and the Milners, these old dudes that have been around for a while that just know how to play the game. And then you have Van Dijk back there doing his thing. And so it's a tough match. It's different than City. I don't fear City as much as I fear Liverpool, because they just have something over us. But maybe we can get something out of this game, because we're both like the informed teams in the league. We're playing at a different level than we were the first 3 times that we played them. Obviously, when we played them the first time around, it wasn't that we didn't have our players. We weren't ready yet. We hadn't really kicked into this form. And I think Sambi played and so did Tavares, right? So we know that that's much different than Tierney and Xhaka. Since Tierney and Xhaka have come back into the team, it's been our best form after Everton, right? So we'll have those 2 players. That'll make a huge difference. And then obviously we know that, like, when we played them in the Carabao Cup, we didn't have our midfield for various reasons. Thomas Partey was at AFCON. Xhaka got the red card. It just wasn't the best time, right? But we also weren't playing at this level yet. We have really kicked it up a notch in these last 5 games or so. So I feel like we're different. I also feel like they've kicked up a notch as well, so they'll be different. So it should be a good game. I would expect this to be a good, almost evenly matched game. I would be very disappointed if we were locked into our half, we weren't touching the ball, and they were just getting waves and waves and waves of pressure without us having an outlet, without us being able to hurt them or create any clear-cut chances. I feel like that's been my disappointment over the last couple seasons with us playing against Liverpool. Beyond a couple of games and a couple of moments, really, we haven't been able to really hurt them. And I don't think we've ever really been set up properly to hurt them. And that's where I'm looking for Arteta to make sure that we have the outlets when they have us under pressure. How are we going to get out? How are we going to hurt them? How are we going to create those chances? Because we never really have done that. We've had little half chances here and there, but I've seen other teams that are less talented than us score goals against Liverpool, and we really struggle to put the ball in the back of the net against them. So it'd be interesting to see how this works out. S says, a good performance at the very least. I don't expect us to win. Ty Jr. says, good performance at the Emirates. The Emirates is a fortress. Tony says, Klopp Closet hates Arsenal and Arteta. I'm not sure why. LFC always bring it. We never get their off days. Look, we're still a big scout. That's the truth. And Liverpool do love to love to hurt us. You can tell. And most teams, like top 6 teams, play harder against each other than they do against anybody else. It's just the lay of the land. It's just the way that it goes. But it does feel like there's something in the air, especially now since Klopp and Arteta have had their little whatever, that there's some hate in the air there. So yeah, we never get their off days. You're 100% right. Tawanda says, loss, but I take a decent performance. Liverpool at their best are at their best, and we're still building up. Hightower says LFC bring their A game against us. They always do. S says, I think we've got a mentality problem that we need to overcome when facing Man City and Liverpool. I mean, I think we kind of did that against Man City. We kind of messed it up a little bit, but I didn't see that same fear that we usually have against Man City, where we just let them kind of play around us and we just look stupid. We really did play well against them. And I know we didn't have all the possession, but you're never going to have all the possession against Man City. And the possession that we did have, we made good use of it to the point where it didn't feel like 30%. It felt like way more than that to me. So, against Liverpool, we need to have something very similar. I think the fans will be a big help in this game to make it a cauldron, to make it a fortress, but it's still going to be hard. Yo-Yo says, will be a spicy game. Arteta clearly doesn't like Klopp. Klopp can't stop flirting with Martinelli. Jota loves playing against us. 34 and Partey last time got reds. True. Tony says, oh my God, that Pep impression clip. Oh my gosh, like seriously. But I just feel like they are on the phone to each other and he's just like, I need y'all to do something like against these guys. Because otherwise, if they beat us, I think Liverpool will go on and win the league. The way City looked, they just looked so scared. And I was like, damn, you just know they're going to bottle it, right? Lionheart says, I want our players to enter the pitch with no fear, fans supporting, throw everything at them and hold their fortress. I agree, Line. I do. Yo-Yo says Diaz versus Cedric. Say less, Yo-Yo. Say less. Harsha says Liverpool might be in a pressure to win to cash in on City's draw today. It could benefit us massively. And I think that as well. Like there's an aspect of them maybe feeling the pressure as well. In terms of having to capitalize, that may help us, but it also may work against us. Because I think Liverpool have a really good mentality. I really do. I saw a comment about as long as we keep 11 men on the pitch, we've got a chance. That's true. We have to stay 11v11. We cannot go down to 10 men. We need to be smart. If we get scored on or scored against, please don't capitulate. Just keep your heads. And I'm talking to you, Gabrielle and Xhaka. Ray says, Liverpool have nothing to prove, but we do. They are the favorites, but it's just one game and we've got a chance. They've not played us on this form. Agreed, Jess. It'll be very interesting. I do think it's going to be interesting. Not necessarily expecting a win, but hoping that we see progression from the match against Man City. That's what I'm looking for. Because you're going to have to play similarly, right? You're going to have to go after them. You're going to have to present some sort of threat. If you don't present any sort of threat against Liverpool and City, you're going to get battered. And what you saw with Crystal Palace is they were a constant threat on the counter. And that little bit of threat and Selhurst Park being loud and just constantly bouncing, it got to City. They missed a couple of chances and then they just started snatching at things. And Crystal Palace were defensively strong and vigilant, and they got the point. And I think something similar can happen with us. We just have to be a little bit more willing to have a threat at the cost of us maybe getting scored on. Because I think that's what's been the issue is we've been so cautious. We still lost. Like we still lost, even though we were cautious, but we presented no threat. And I would like to see us go for it with like Martinelli and Saka up the wings. We need to do it. Let's see. Johnson said, yes, Liverpool has quality. Take Mane and Salah out. Liverpool is finished. Well, they didn't play against us last time and they still won. Mane and Salah were both missing the last time that we played them in the Carabao Cup, and they still beat us 2-0. They still have so much quality in that team. So even though I agree that they're weaker without them, I don't think they're so weak that they're like nothing without them, if that makes sense. Yo-Yo says, all of Liverpool's forwards have great records versus the Arsenal. I think this will be a thriller if the exact same lineup starts. So here's the other part of it is that did anybody feel like Lacazette and Granit Xhaka were conserving their energy against Leicester? Because I do think as I rewatched the game, we didn't press the way that we have been pressing over the last couple of games. And I wonder if Arteta felt we didn't need to press so much against Leicester, because Leicester are one of the worst pressing teams in the league, and they're also not really that great. So maybe he didn't feel like we needed to press them and really put them under pressure. So maybe there is going to be some plan to really go for it against Liverpool, because that's really what I want to see. I kind of feel like I want us to go as hard as we possibly can against Liverpool and really go for it. And whatever happens, happens, and we just suck it up against Aston Villa. I don't really want to see us play some sort of try not to lose thing and then still lose and then go in to Aston Villa with that mentality, if that makes sense. But it felt like we were conserving our energy a little bit against Leicester. That's what it felt like to me. Jesse Russell says, have you ever gotten across the pond to see an Arsenal game live? Yes, I have. Twice. I watched Arsenal draw to Brighton when Emery was still manager, and I watched us play against Newcastle. We beat them 4-0 at the Emirates. Arteta was in charge. I remember Pepe, Lacazette, Ozil, and somebody else scored. It was a good night. It was a good night. Let's see. Even if we draw this game by getting dominated for 90 minutes, it wouldn't be a sign of progress to me. We did it at Anfield. I want the performance we put up against Man City. And that's the key, is that at Anfield, it really didn't feel the same. I mean, I know that it was partly because of like the whole COVID situation and the tests and all of that made that 0-0 feel better, especially because we went down to 10 men. But I don't know about you guys, but the 0-0 versus Liverpool at Anfield didn't feel anywhere as good as the loss against Man City at home. And I know that may sound like, oh my gosh, you're accepting mediocrity. But it's not that. It's just the performance was so much more fulfilling because we actually went for it versus like just sitting back in our box and just defending, which I felt like was a lot less fulfilling for me. So I want to see us build on the Man City performance, not on what we did at Anfield, because ultimately we were kind of getting overrun, and that's what led to them kicking the ball over the top and Xhaka kicking Jota in the chest, and that was it. Let's see. Seawalder says, I was at that Brighton game. It was terrible. It was so bad. Like, for that to be my first Emirates experience, I can't lie. Like, the feeling in the place was like very like on edge. And I know that was because we were in that run under Emery where we were just kind of throwing away points. And if we had just won one of those games, we would have made it into the top 4. And we drew the game. And I remember Xhaka just kind of fouled one of the Brighton players in the box. And it was just, it was awful. It really, really was. Let's see. Lionide says, it came to me last night, though. Ramsdale would be red carded profile. No. Tawanda says, your impressions are hilarious. Well, thank you. Yeah, I always do impressions. Some people love it. Some people don't. Yeah, but basically we all kind of have the same, the same kind of expectations. Most people are saying that we want to have just a really good performance and kind of build on what we saw against Man City and build on what we've been doing. It's kind of a free hit in a way, but we don't want to just waste it, right? Because if there's any chance that we could get something from this game, I mean, personally, I think if we get something from this game, top 4 is ours. I think that would be a good, it would give us points that we're not expected to have. And I think it would be really good for us. Ty Jr. says, I'm sure the Newcastle one wasn't that great either, if I remember correctly. Well, we won 4-0. It was bad in the first half, but it was good in the second half. That is the game that Bukayo Saka megged. Who was it? What's his name? I know him because he's American, but he's not there anymore. But it was the game that he megged whoever that was and took his life away. And Saka kind of like introduced himself to the world. It was that game. Pepe scored a nice goal. I think Ozil had like a goal, but it was kind of like pathetically rolled over the touchline or over the goal line. Lacazette scored like a scuff goal, and he had it scored for a long time. I remember Eddie and Nketiah, Yedlin, exactly, Yedlin, and yeah, Lacazette scored that scuff goal, and he hadn't played for so long because Eddie and Nketiah was starting over him in that time. Remember that? And yeah, so I remember I thought that game was the shit, but at the same time, that was, I mean, we were really starving, right? We were really starving. It was crazy. But yeah, that was a good game. It was cold though. Coom says, Odegaard can marry my sister. What a player. I love that. Yeah, you guys, for 10 more minutes, do you guys want to do some Q&A before we go ahead and get out of here? I know we didn't really go deep dive into the game, but just kind of talked about the performances and different players and stuff like that. So fire away if you guys have some questions before we go ahead and get out of here. Let's see. Tawanda says, finishing in the other European places is progress regardless. Finishing up fourth is going to be massive for us. I mean, at this point, yeah, I do agree that like I still kind of live in that place of like if we finish in the top 6, I will be satisfied. But I do feel like I'll be a little bit like, because we really, I don't want to say we should get it, but it feels like we should, if that makes sense. I wouldn't like kill anybody if I wouldn't kill anybody anyway, but I wouldn't be like Arteta out if you didn't get top 4, but I would feel like, how did we not get it? If that makes sense. S says, was that the last game before the pandemic? I think it was. Because I remember during that time, like they were starting to show like there was like a cruise that was in somewhere in Asia, and they were like trapped on that boat because everybody on there had coronavirus and nobody really knew anything about it. It was right before like the Italy crisis, and like remember Italy had gotten really effed over by COVID at that point. And so it was like literally right before. It was like February 14th-ish time, because I think we went for my mom's birthday. So yeah, it was right before then. Being Uki says, how did you end up supporting Arsenal? So here's the story. So essentially, I played growing up, and I really loved watching the game, which is kind of weird because most girls my age or in general don't enjoy watching the game, even if they play. And my mom was also, she's kind of mom where if I'm into something, she gets into something, and she's a huge Arsenal fan still to this day. And she was actually finding games for us to watch. And the first Premier League game that we ever watched was actually a Man United game. Because at that time in America, you could only really watch the best teams, and the 2 best teams at that time were Manchester United and Arsenal. The first game I ever watched was Manchester United versus somebody. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I really like this. Because it was obviously a higher level than what I'd ever seen before, because I'd only really seen the MLS and, you know, the US women play and stuff like that. And then the next weekend that rolled around, my mom was like, oh, you need to come see this, like come see this team. And so we're watching the game, and the whole team was like, I mean, obviously, you know, the players that were out there: Bergkamp, Vieira, Gilberto, Thierry Henry, Ashley Cole, Sol Campbell, Kolo Toure. You know, it was insane. And for me, seeing so many Black players out on the pitch at one time was like, what? Because I was always the only Black kid in my class, the only Black kid on my team, you know, so it was so like, it was so different. And then there was this guy on the sideline, and obviously like at that time, Arsene Wenger, he looked like a professor, and it was just so, it was like mesmerizing. And so Arsenal became my team like from there, and that was like 2002 or something like that. So obviously it was like in the height of Arsenal being like the best team in the world, obviously. And that's how I started supporting them, and I've been obsessed ever since. Lionide asked, Xhaka has dried up on the cards, floodgates open soon. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I don't want to tempt fate, but I've seen people kind of tweeting that like Xhaka's due a moment. And I'm just like, please don't say that. Hopefully he doesn't get a card, or any sort of card against Liverpool. I don't want to see him get any sort of card, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got one against Liverpool, because it's going to be a very emotional game, because they're going to be playing out of their skin. We're going to be playing out of our skin. And so, yeah, we'll see. Blake asked the score prediction for Arsenal versus Liverpool. I'll obviously be doing a match preview tomorrow, but my score prediction is actually going to be 1-1. I think we'll get a draw. Yeah, I'm being positive. Captain Joka says Felix, Bellingham, and Isak or Rice. David and Nunez. Let's see. Felix, Bellingham, Isak or Rice. And Isak or Rice. So is it Felix or Bellingham? Oh, I get it. Felix, Bellingham, or Isak. Oh, got it. I get it now. Yeah, I'm going with Felix, Bellingham, and Isak, and it ain't close, okay? So Clive Palmer from Arsenal Vision, he did his like summer transfer wish list or whatever, and I'm gonna do one too. Not like anybody cares like what I think, like I'm just doing it for myself, whatever. People care about what Clive is saying, nobody cares about what I'm saying. But long story short, Felix is my striker. Like that is the guy that I want to come in. Now, I do like Nunez a lot, but I don't think you can get Felix and Nunez, and because they're both going to be very expensive. So I would actually choose Felix, even though I do think Nunez is very good, and I think he will get a move to the Premier League this time around, either to us or to West Ham. So, I mean, Jonathan David can end up at West Ham. He can end up with us as well, but I'm going to go for Felix. I actually think Bellingham profile-wise is perfect for that left 8 position that we're trying to fill. There's nobody else like him, and that's what I mean when I say like those types of players are very few and far between, that are all-around midfielders that can score goals, pick a pass, beat a man, can be defensively sound, and have a high ceiling. Like they just don't come very often, and so my choice for that position would be somebody like a Bellingham or a Fabian Ruiz, who said that he rejected us, but I've seen conflicting reports on that as well. And Isak, I do like Isak. He's going through a difficult time, but I mean, he is a very talented player. So yeah, I'd take him. Rice, I just don't think is really realistic. Jonathan David is a really good player that I think fits that Lacazette role. Not sure if I think that he has a higher ceiling than Felix. And I would like somebody that I feel like could become elite world class, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I think. Mr. Austin says, thoughts on Jesse Marsch getting his first Premier League win? Okay, so I have huge thoughts on this. So Jesse Marsch, for me, is the coach that should take over for Greg Berhalter. I think he'd be perfect for the U.S. men's national team, but obviously he's coaching at the club level now. I think he's an excellent coach, and I've been very offended to the level that I want to send a letter to the manager because of the undertones around the Premier League speaking about Jesse Marsch. First of all, it's always the American Jesse Marsch, the American Jesse Marsch. We know he's American. And I saw Gabby Abanglahor, asshole. Usually his commentary is okay, but this was just crap, where he was going in on Jesse Marsch because of the huddle that he did at the end of their match against like Leicester or somebody. They lost 1-0. And I was like, who cares? But he said it was like a Ted Lasso moment. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Managers do huddles all the time. Why is it like Ted Lasso, like just because he's American? And those undertones have kind of been there since he's been appointed. And as an American, like I have to say, like, it's like people think you're speaking a completely different language. Like we can't understand football the way that everybody else does. We can understand it. We can coach it. We can play it just like everybody else. It just feels like there's like this not anti-American thing, but it's almost like we're like a joke. And it's not funny, because anybody who's American that really cares about the game doesn't like always being the American, like, oh, look at this American. Oh, it's American. Like, it's just so annoying, So Jesse Marsch, I have huge hopes for him. I think he'll save Leeds from getting relegated. He's been unlucky in some of the games so far, but he finally got his first win, and I think he's going to bring that group together and save them from relegation. Where they go from there, I'm not sure, but I'm very much so behind him, and I really don't like the undertones there around the Premier League that is like this American, this Ted Lasso guy. He's a very capable manager, and nobody would be questioning him if he wasn't from the US of A, you know? S says, question if you could bring in, and you guys know I don't like Leeds, right? So if you've been here for a while, you guys know I have an agenda against Leeds, and it's taking a lot for me. I mean, it took Jesse Marsch to get me to want them to do well. Like, it's that serious. Question, if you could bring in any midfielder in the world to Arsenal, who would you choose? So if I could choose any midfielder in the world, and I'm always going to be semi-realistic, I mean, I could just say De Bruyne or something like that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to probably go for somebody that could improve the midfield that we have right now, because I do think that midfield is 2/3 away from being a world-class midfield. I'm going to go with Jude Bellingham. I mean, I could choose, because here's the thing. I could choose any of the old guys that have been around for a while. Verratti, Cruz, Modric, Busquets. I could choose any of those types of guys, been around for a while. I could choose anybody, but I could choose Bernardo Silva. I could choose any of these guys. But I think Jude Bellingham is going to be one of the best midfielders in the world. I think that guy, his ceiling is so massive, and his mentality is insane. I think he ends up at Liverpool, I have to be honest, to replace like Henderson or somebody like that. I think Liverpool will get one of Declan Rice or Jude Bellingham, because I think both of them could fit them quite well. But honestly, if I could bring in anybody, it would be probably Jude Bellingham, because I just think at his age, what he's accomplishing so like right now and what he could potentially be is scary. He has it all. He can score goals. He can pick a pass. He can dribble. He's strong. He's tenacious. The mentality is there. And he's only like 18. I guess like a second option would be probably Gavi from Barcelona or Pedri, one of them, because both of them are fucking excellent. I mean, when we talk about youth projects, young players, promising projects, Xavi for Barcelona and the young players that they have coming through there is insane. It's right up there with us, our project. It really is. And I think they edge us just ever so slightly, just because I think Gavi and Pedri, Ansu Fati, if he could get fit, Ricky Puig, I mean, that is an insane project. It really is. And so if I had to choose like just one other, just if it wasn't Bellingham, it would be Gavi. I just think when I watch him play, I'm just like the intelligence, the quickness of thought, like he's just such a good young player. But I'm not going to choose any of the old guys, right? That's just me. There you go. There you go. Let's see. Yo-Yo says Lampard's fate. Relegation. Relegation. And I'm sorry. I know this is wrong, but inject it. Like, it's just, we all know that we've suffered at the hands of Frank Lampard, at the feet of Frank Lampard over the years. I think the narrative around him is false. He's done absolutely nothing to be called like this up-and-coming manager. He's nowhere near the levels of Vieira and Gerrard and Arteta. He's a fraud. And it's just funny. Like, he shouldn't have never went there. Like, that was a losing battle anyway. But is he coaching? What do they do at practice? Like, do they do anything? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just so funny. He's getting relegated. I do think them and Burnley will swap places, because I think Burnley have enough about them to kind of just, and the way that Everton are open at the back, the way they're capitulating, I think Lampard and Everton get relegated. I really do. Let's see. Tony says, can we get a shout out for Aubameyang body slamming and the ratio over Piers Morgan? Yeah, I did see that. And I don't know what Piers Morgan's problem is. We're in a good place. We're winning games, but he's obsessed with Aubameyang because he met him a couple years ago or something like that. And he hates Arteta. He's a typical Arteta hater that attaches himself to any player that Arteta has let go of and uses it at see Arteta's crap. Piers Morgan does not speak for us. And I like that Aubameyang came out and said everybody wins and all that kind of stuff because that's the truth, isn't it? Aubameyang is in the best place for him, and we're in a good place without him. And it's nothing there. Just let it go. Aubameyang was not scoring goals for us. And I don't really think it's Arteta's fault. So he just needs to let it go. He's a clown. I'm sorry. He just is. We're going to block you. Weird webcam person. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, so you guys are answering the question as well. Hakum says Luka Modric, I guess, is the player that you would bring in. Eze or Tochukwu Eze says Ruben Neves. Moss says Frankie de Jong, but unrealistic. Frankie de Jong would be. So there's two. Frankie de Jong would be perfect in that left 8 for me, but I think Bellingham is what you need for the Premier League. But I love Frankie de Jong. There's so many players on that Barcelona team that I really rate so highly, and I think they're back. They're back. Xavi's doing an excellent job, obviously, because he has so much quality in his team. So I think Frankie de Jong is somebody that he's so nice to watch. And sometimes I'm Thomas Partey plus Frankie de Jong and Odegaard would just be mwah, but at the same time, I do think I kind of would prefer somebody a little bit more like Bellingham that could do a little bit more defensive work. Because I do think Frankie de Jong, although he can kind of do it in Spain, I'm not sure he can do it in the Premier League. Not saying he can't be good, but in that role that we're looking for. Neves, you guys really like Neves. David FC is Thiago. S says that is not realistic. Well, I mean, you said anybody in the world. If you say anybody in the world but realistic, I mean, how fun would that be? Bellingham won't become cheap, though. Here's the thing, though. I don't think we need to be looking for cheap players. I think at this point, I'm leaving it up to the Cronkies. In order to improve this team, I do think you could do it on a budget, but why would you? If we need to get into Champions League, stay in Champions League, whatever, we're going to have to spend the money on the right types of players. And if you're going to spend a lot of money, spend it on Jude Bellingham. Spend it on Declan Rice, if that's the player that you think it is. Spend it on De Jong, because once we get into Champions League, if we do get there, those are the type of players that we probably should be going after. So we're going to spend the money. Know what I mean? So yeah, Hakum says, I really like Ricky Puig. I do too. I like all those players that they got. Can we have them? Ty Jr. says Calvin Phillips is a baller. He needs to get rid of the bun. You guys know how I feel about those buns that the whole Leeds team had. I was like, is it a thing? So yeah, but let's go ahead and get out of here, you guys. This is a long show, but I hope you guys, you guys you said scroll down a bit, Jess. Okay. Frank Kessie, Marathon Hustle says Tielemans, Hakum says Kimmich, Blake says Ruben Neves. So you guys do like Ruben Neves. You really do. I'm very surprised. Let's see. We will do something on the academy when George comes back. I'm not an expert on the academy. I pay attention when people tell me about somebody. And right now I'm really loving Brooke Norton-Cuffy, obviously, who's been spoken about so much before people really started talking about him. George was talking about him, and he's from our academy. He's a right back. And I'm just let the kid cook, because we may not need to buy a right back if he's good enough. And David Ornstein just put out a report today saying that he's going to hopefully, optimistically sign a new deal with us. And so that's the player that I'm looking at right now. But I don't spend a lot of time really paying attention to it, I have to be honest. But when George comes back from Rome, I'll get his ideas on it, because he's really more keyed in than I am on it. Let's see. Lamptard, you guys are mean. Yeah. All right, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I have food. I'm starving. And yeah, we will talk on the next one tomorrow. Match preview for Arsenal versus Liverpool. I'm already nervous about it. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. This has been so much fun, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.